Good morning, Future Fest. Are you ready for the future? Not sure. No. Good. That's what I like. Voice of dissent. Get going early in the room. I am Timandra Harkness. I am the host of this stage for the day. It's great to see so many of you here. I do various other things. I'm not here. I present Radio 4's Future Proofing, and I wrote a book about big data. And I do a lot of events like this where people like you come to think about big thoughts. So the first session, if you just heard Jeff's introduction, you will have heard something about this. I'm really excited because our first speaker and performer, Imogen, is somebody I first heard about several years ago. We did a radio program about the blockchain, and she was doing really exciting, innovative things with technology. Imogen Heap is an award-winning recording artist, engineer, and producer, as well as being a performer. She's the founder of Mycelia, which is something you can go and have a look at, I want to kind of say participate in later on. It's in one of the other rooms. It's an immersive installation. But she's also the developer, the wearer, the performer with, I'm not sure how to describe it, of the mi.mu gloves, which we're about to witness. And if none of that impresses you, she wrote the score for the Harry Potter play. Yes, you see? We were discussing how many people would be impressed. I said they'll be super impressed. Yes, so many, many reasons to be absolutely thrilled. I'm certainly thrilled. I hope you are as well. So please welcome onto the stage to start this day fantastically well. Please welcome Imogen Heap.
Thank you, Timandra. Hello, everyone. It's funny to be back here, 10 years on from the last time I was here in 2018. I remember it was a really hot year, just like it is this year, actually, because, it's 2028 now. And I thought, just to kind of take us back, if anyone was there in that hot day, that I could take you back to the technology that I was using around the time, which I'd been developing with a team of people for about 7 years, trying to get closer to my computer, because, back then we didn't have, like, gestural interfacing and all that stuff, mind reading. So we had to find a way to get closer to our technology without having to sit behind our laptop. And as a creative, that was just really annoying to have to sit behind a laptop and make music, and on stage having to always be tethered by this technology. So I wanted to try to bring technology closer to me, humanize the technology that I wanted to work with. We started to develop these mi.mu gloves. So I thought this was actually, 10 years ago, was the last time I performed this song like this, because actually then we went on tour and we had a band and it was all very exciting. So I'm gonna start. Now this song is called Breathe In, and it was written with my friend Guy Sigsworth. We were in a band called Frou Frou once. Not a lot of people know that he wrote the song, actually, but I love it, so I'm going to play it for you. But first of all, I'll just give a little introduction to the gloves. So when I do this, I'm actually setting north. I know that's not north, but I don't know if that's north. I think that's north. But anyway, that is setting my relative north. And so when I do that, now my song has kind of started clicking away in my ear, which thankfully you can't hear. And when I do this with my fist, because my gloves recognize my postures. My computer has been trained to learn some postures that I choose, and I have 9 of them, and you'll start to see a few of them. So this one is just called Fist, and you can see my gloves have gone red, so I know that it's working, and you know that I'm now in record. Well, you didn't, but now you do, because I've just told you. And what you'll hear in a minute is another me from about 9 seconds ago. And there she is. And so that's my loop, and then I can stop looping that by putting my hand over there. And now I'm going to pick up some drums by doing that. I picked up my drumsticks. And I'm going to play some drums. It's quite fun, isn't it? And some hi-hats. And then I'm going to go out of that mode. And now I'm going to bring in an instrument. So usually, back in the day, you would have had to use a slider. You have to go back to your mixing desk and bring up a sound. So I'm going to do this. That's called pinch. And over here, I've got a little sound, which is quite nice. Like a little microwave. And then, what else can I do? Oh, I can tell it all to be a bit quiet. And then I can bring it back. And then when I go over here, just You can hear that my voice gets really big. That's because over there is 100% reverb, and over here is no reverb. And there's also a bit of delay as well. And then I've got some other sounds. So I do a 2-finger point to get that sound, and I have another sound over there. And then I can also take my voice. This is called the jellyfish, because it feels a bit like a jellyfish, developed by Adam in our team at mi.mu, and basically I can like scrub along the thing I just said, like a waveform. And I can kind of pan it around the room. Yeah, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete all of that. So I've just deleted it by pressing my button, and I got confirmation from my buzzers inside my hands. And now it says green for go, because I'm ready to play the song, sing the song. And, you know, every song doesn't have to be done like this, but it's a good demonstration of, you know, what we can do now with the gloves. But I then went on tour, where I, you know, augment my piano, I augment my voice. It's not, I have a little band, and these are part of the performance, not the be-all and end-all of the performance as they are here. So hopefully everything will work wonderfully, this old technology, and I'll sing you Breathe In. But first of all, I'm going to have some water, because I need some. Okay. And if you liked, we have the reimagining music in room 2, where you can have a little look around some other people who are using the gloves and the latest in the technology where we've come to. Because we then moved into manufacturing at the end of 2018, and you can see where we're developing that. And we've also got a mi.mu glove, kids glove. Build it and code it in a couple of hours, and off you go. Okay, here we go. 'Cause I love you, love you, love you, love you, 'cause I love you, love you, love you. So yes, if you'd like to see the evolution of the mi.mu glove, then you can have a look in our room 2. So I wanted to talk to you today about a journey that I began in 2014, when I gave birth for the first, well, the only time, as far as I know, 2014, and it was interesting, very different. Everything changed. My life got very, very busy, and I didn't have the same amount of time, which was already no time, to deal with the admin that goes on in music making, in, you know, just documenting where your songs are, knowing where the revenue might be coming from or not, chasing up things, you know, endless emails, all these different social sites and distributed sites, versions of myself, multiple different versions, feeling very fragmented in this siloed industry that it was back then. So for these 4 years, I really, instead of, I kind of put my music a bit on hold, apart from doing the Harry Potter play, which took a while. But other than that, I pretty much, I started this initiative that was called Mycelia, because I was really inspired by a piece of technology called the blockchain technology. Everybody knows where that went to. But at that time, it was so exciting for me to understand and to think about that other industries all around the world were having similar problems in value chain, supply chain, transparency, non-transparency. The self-interests in the industry really making it hard for there to be any innovation in our music industry at that time. And so I felt that there was something in this blockchain thing that maybe we could use that as a catalyst to discuss the future as we'd like it, because so many people were discussing identity, transparency, and all these things at that time. So we went through a bit of a journey. This is our logo, which is like an augmented play button, because back in those days, all you could see was this data when you had a song. So this was a song called Tiny Human, about my daughter, the only other song I wrote in that time, actually. And And, oh, that's annoying. Sorry about that. I don't know why that's doing that. So, yeah, Tiny Human, because in the DSPs back in those days, all you could see was the name of the song, the name of the artist, and the release date and the time. That was basically, and a pack shot, you know, the image. But no other data. And there was all this data that I really wanted to share that would help me so much in my day-to-day if it was out there in the world, doing business on my behalf, just, you know, machines looking for data about the song so people could do business with the song. But there wasn't that anywhere. And this was all the data that I really wanted to share. Oh, that's really annoying, isn't it? Sorry. Some man is going to give me a handheld microphone now, which is going to feel really weird because I don't use those. Thank you. Okay. Hello. Testing, testing. I'll just take all of my paraphernalia off in that case. Okay, so I wanted to share all this data. And what did we have here? So we have correct lyrics, really obvious, but there was nowhere to find verified correct lyrics because nobody was looking at liner notes anymore. We didn't have that kind of information. Recording credits, who played the violin, the viola, all the people that played on this song, and the mastering engineer who worked with me for like 15 years. Nobody knew really who he was. The software instruments that I used and the hardware that I used, this was always really interesting for whenever I mentioned any bit of gear in those days, I would have the manufacturer call me up and be like, or whoever it was, like Avid or Pro Tools, would call me up and be like, hey, I didn't realise you used our gear. Would you like some more gear? And I'd be like, yes, thank you. That would have been great 5 years ago, but thank you very much. So, you know, being able to find the kind of meaningful collaboration between sponsors or business partners, that would have helped. Playlist data for people to, you know, maybe not just about electronic music, but it could have been about motherhood, colic, sleepless nights. Somebody could create playlists out of this data. So these are the kind of things we really wanted to share, but there was nowhere for us to share it. The inspiration, the person who actually sponsored the song, Sennheiser, some additional media. So if anyone wanted to ever mix the stems, or, you know, now we've got obviously VR and AR and whatever we now have. But back then, we couldn't have access to the stems of a song to kind of innovate and explore how our new platform might be using that kind of reactive or generative music using existing stems. So that would have made it nice and easy. Video credits, just, you know, shout out to all the people that are, you see one person on the front of a song, but there's hundreds of people behind us, and they don't really ever get a look in. They didn't get a look in. So here we go. All the thanks. Number one is my daughter, Scout Heap Labor. Well done, Scout. So another thing that was not possible at that time was to be able to share the usage rights. If somebody wanted to license this song, you know, they wanted to put it in a film or a TV, or they wanted to play it on their college radio, or, you know, it was really difficult to actually find a way to pay the artist or to know what to pay the artist, which is complete madness. And here we could, you know, put up our contact info and that kind of thing. And then we could also tell, you know, how much we wanted to pay each person, how much, who to pay and how much to pay them. We knew that, but we couldn't have any way of telling anyone that in any useful way. And because we just discovered blockchain, we discovered these things called digital wallets. So we decided, we did this little experiment, and we set up some digital wallets, and we released this song called Tiny Human with Ujo Music at the time. And we were the first song to use smart contracts back in 2016 or 15, I think. So because back then, this is just the UK, this was the crazy situation of the distribution of music and payment through, well, payment streams across 4 different sectors. So we'd have broadcast radio, you can see there's a long vertical stream of people, and sometimes this would take a year, and that's just in the UK. So we've just heard it on the radio, but it takes a whole year to come back to the artist through sometimes 4 or 5 different parties. Streaming was the same, direct sync was the same, and downloads were the same. All different models. Every single country has a different set of models, and if you're collecting from international, then you sometimes would have another 2 steps of all of this ahead of the one coming into the UK, and that could take 2 to 3 years of time to receive any money. So a lot of inefficiency back then, A lot of fragmentation, a lot of interested parties interested in keeping the data before they maybe sent it on, and long waiting and holding periods. And when it got to the artist, we actually did this this project called The Life of a Song, and you can also see that in Room 2, which explains the music industry as it was then through the lens of one song. So you can see all the remuneration, the biography, who championed the song, where the spikes hit with the fans, and how that reacted in terms of payment or not. And what that song earned over the time, what we could gather anyway. There's also a lot of areas where we couldn't find data. It was very grey, or there were huge black holes we'll never see inside of. So that was really useful for us as a kind of research project. And because ultimately we knew that this was coming, that this is really what we needed. We needed a point where all of the world could contact a song, and the song would tell it in it what they wanted to know. So that could be, these are all the people that played in it, all the stuff that you've just seen, who to pay, how to pay. So somebody on the radio wanted to play a song, they would contact the song would say, okay, you can play us, but we want this kind of data and this kind of money. Off it would fire, automatic payments, done. In my bank, in my crypto wallet, within a split second of it being played, and so all the other musicians also. No wastage, no, hundreds of people along the way, wrestling with siloed databases and incorrect data. So there we go. That was the kind of data that we wanted to get back. Where in the world were these songs being played? So we would ask this. This is what we kind of thought was going to happen. And around each song, this is the beginning of what later became the creative passport, which I'll talk to you about as well, was the idea that each song could have its own, it could be connected to the mother spore of the artists. So there's my 200 songs, or however many songs, and with each song it would draw you back to what we now call the creative passport, which would show you my biography, my tour dates. It would connect to all the services that wanted to share my music with this data, so that the fan could explore more about myself and about the related people in my music. And so imagine that, back then there's this kind of vision of a future music ecosystem where all the songs and all the creatives were mapped in their own databases, music maker database. There was no database where you could find information about music makers that was verified by them. Everything was sitting in other people's databases, and we didn't have one identity. I'm a person. I'm a musician, self-employed musician. I have my own ecosystem, my own world, but there wasn't any data representation of that on the digital space. So we started to imagine what kind of services could come out of that. And maybe you came here this morning and you noticed on the radio that all the playlists were magenta, and the reason for that is because all of the one of the services that has now cropped up in the world is the possibility for artists to divert their monies to a specific cause to raise money for. So all of the monies that would have gone to them goes directly to a cause, so it kind of empowers the radio stations to be able to give money to these causes. And as we know, around the equator now we've got huge problems with displacement of people because of the 60-degree heats. So a lot of us are giving our money to those people, to the disaster relief. Okay, so there's one example of a service that could have happened. We believed that. So we were going ahead with this in 2016 at the time, thinking, we're going to get ethical, commercial, technical standards, and the music industry is going to come behind us, and we're going to make this change. But we soon realised that was never going to happen. And we decided, okay, well, we're not getting support from the majors. Maybe we just got to do something small. What can we do? So what we started to do was we had a party at my house in December of 2017 for my 40th birthday. And we generated these things. You can get one of these. We've reprinted a few more. And what we did was just simply put in it what I would like to see in my creative passport. Because I thought this would help the music industry imagine that this is not a threat. This is just a missing cog that's going to help us all connect our dots together and actually make a really flourishing music ecosystem rather than a very unhealthy, kind of stagnated music industry. So in it, we had a little explanation, and then you could just see, there's a picture of me, there's my basic data, there's some highlights of stuff that I was working on at the time. My quote, only do what you can see in the headlights. I use that every day, even now. And so, you could see my latest biography. This would help services scrape correct data about you that's relevant to you at the time. You would fire out from your Creative Passport, and all the services would read in that instant. The various roles that I was in, so if somebody wanted to find somebody to speak about something on a radio show, they wanted to find a mother, a musician who was interested in technology, they would find me. Skill sets and interests, my current inspirations, other musicians that I'd like to share the knowledge of for people to find. So all of this data, the videos, everything in one place, pointing and linking to other places, but having a home for me, a digital me. This wasn't ever planned to be a direct consumer thing or a direct to fan. It was always a business to business solution for the music industry to help become more than the sum of its parts. So in there you would set preferences about your personal data and your private data, what you were willing to share openly, what you wanted only certain services to have, and this would enable them to work very efficiently on your behalf and also share data across platforms which currently they didn't. And then all of the awards and nominations and music and all the different songs and some of the representation of some of the things that I was doing. And this helped people connect and go, oh, right, so she develops her own gloves with this team, or, oh, I didn't realise that she worked with Intel, or, maybe we should sponsor her as well, she'd work with Intel. And this, so we just thought, imagine if every single music maker could do this. There's so many, I bet there's at least 20 people who make music of some sort in this room. Whether they consider themselves musicians or not, it's a bit silly, because you are if you make a piece of music. And the idea was that everyone would have one of these. Because we started to see that if there was a database of creatives that we could help author to, a database of songs, really in the past, many times, the industry has failed to come up with a global database of songs that people could access. And we thought, well, maybe if they include us in that, if we become empowered to be able to author to that database of songs, then we could help this come to life. So we started to imagine, what we call the Global Repertoire Database 2, because number 1 failed terribly by millions of pounds. So this would happen, and then we would help kind of emerge those two together. And then we talked about smart contracts, about micro contracts. We worked with a company called Mycelia to build these smart contracts so that make it really effortless and easy to do lightweight collaboration legally. And there was my dashboard, so this is what I would imagine would come in every day. A new science fiction short film is wanting to use my music. We have a private concert from So Far Sounds has come in as a suggestion. So these were all of the possibilities that could come into my dashboard, because lots of people talk about streaming money, but they don't talk about all these other possibilities, all these other revenue streams. There was literally no innovation in this, how to source and find musicians for all these other possibilities, which meant that if there was, as we have now, musicians don't have to be hugely famous to make a living from music. There are so many avenues, whether it's giving workshops, talks, education, writing in a book, doing, clarinet lesson, all these possibilities. So then what we actually did was we took this Creative Passport, and this is all we had. We went around the world for a whole year with this Creative Passport and a little app which was a way to peer-to-peer verify musicians so they could acknowledge, yes, I'm Imogen Heap, and I could then verify that my friend Zoe Keating was Zoe Keating, and then she could verify her friends, and we could verify da-da-da-da-da. And eventually our plan was to go around the world and get 100,000 music makers to put themselves on the map and say, we are here, we are data organised, we are ready for action. And what started to happen was we got way more than that, because we were quite shocked to discover who wanted to have a Creative Passport. And from that, we got services started to develop for us instead of for them, or instead of for what they thought we might need, because they could access us directly, because they could see what kind of data we had, to see what the services that we needed that we would end up paying for. So they started to pay into the service of the peer-to-peer database that we'd set up, all the music makers,
And it's always been free for music makers, and we would pay for the services that we'd use. But this basic layer was always free, is always free. It's a non-profit, and the services would come up, and they would pay. They pay a large sum of money to enter this incredible database of music makers, which they currently didn't have access to. And we really started to see a shift in the music industry, where it became sustainable, not only sustainable but truly flourishing. All kinds of services popped up that we couldn't even have imagined. And there's no board of Mycelia. It's a complete open governance, open source, open governance. And it took a long while to find our space there, but we did eventually. And that's why I'm here talking to you today, looking only like 40, because, I've just got so much more time on my hands because I don't have to deal with all the admin like I used to. And, I've had this amazing times with my daughter, and I've been able to really create so well and just felt kind of free in this space, and also able to innovate, but not having to deal with all that, just tons and tons of admin that was crazy. And my team members probably remember it back then, how insane it was, what the kind of stuff that we had to do. So I just wanted to share the story as to how we kind of got together music makers around the world and discovered loads of other music makers around the world who are also building incredible platforms for us to use, and ideas and connective community sharing and knowledge sharing and support. It's really an unrecognisable space than what it was 10 years ago. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Imogen. That's fantastic. And what a wonderful performance.
Thanks.
I'm not sure now whether we're in 2028 or 2018.
It's up to you.
I guess you're all here, so either you've been here for 10 years, in which case, credit to you in this heat, or it's 2018. A couple of questions have come in via the Slido. You see, now you're all asking questions now, aren't you? This is absolutely the time. If you've been enwrapped and thinking and you want to ask a question now via the Slido, go for it, because they're coming in real time. So high tech. A couple of questions came in earlier, which I think probably relate to the performance. So if we can go back to that, because they're very good questions. Somebody anonymous asked, a traditional performer might use body language, including hand movements. Of course, you can read this as well. I don't know why I'm reading it out. Body language and hand movements to convey emotion. So do the gloves make you feel restricted in that at all?
Less restricted than I'll speak in 2018 space, less restricted than I would have been if I had to use the stuff that's off the shelf, which is a keyboard, a linear keyboard, some, parameter changing through a button or a slider or a pot. So the difference is that I can be standing in front of you without anything surrounding me and just feel like I'm really in the moment. And, and we're getting better at developing that interface between the gloves, the software in between the off-the-shelf systems like Ableton Live and Cubase, which are what musicians use in the studio or live on stage. The real I think where the real moves will come, which is as the gestural wear becomes more adopted, then the digital music recording services, programs, will start to think in terms of gesture rather than what they think of now in terms of buttons and sliders. So that thing, the jellyfish that Adam created, that's kind of more the space where if we start to see instruments and effects kind of sitting in that gestural space, in that 360 space, in that interactive space, then this will all start to grow together. And we are seeing a bit of that. But yeah, it's kind of, I thought it would be all about the gloves. Once we get the gloves, then we'll be able to do everything. But now we realise that the gloves are great and we've got this far, but now we really need to help try to get them out into the world and push that innovation forward from the programme side.
Well, that actually relates very much to the second question, which is, are there any plans to put this technology in schools? Somebody called Emma. Hello, Emma.
Yeah.
Because she says it would be a great way to get young people involved in music at a time when the arts aren't really prioritised.
Yeah,
we disguise it as technology.
Yeah. We're going to have a DIY glove next year, which will bring down the costs a lot. And the end of this year, we have the full manufactured glove. But hopefully, sooner rather than later, we have the mi.mu glove, which you can have a little look at, which is you cut out the felt to fit your hand, you stitch it together, you've got a little micro bit board, a speaker, and some crocodile clips. And you can,
you can just make things with it. So a kid from any age, really, like obviously you might need your mum or dad to help you out. But, you know, a kid who's in... The one that's in there was built by an 11-year-old girl who'd never coded anything before, never built anything with tech before, and she built it herself in 3 hours, guided by a tutor, and so, yeah.
And where can people have a look at that? Is that here
That's
today?
That's in room 2, yeah.
In room 2, excellent. So go off to room 2 at the end of this and have a look at that. Okay, and now we have more on the hoof questions, I think, as people were listening and writing. Do you see Mycelia, so that's the creative passport, do you see that expanding into other fields of creatives, writers and designers and so on?
Yeah, lots of people do. We're just kind of doing what we can see in the headlights, doing what we can manage at the moment as a small team. But Mark Simpkins is also on our team. He's interacting with the Design Council, and he's a tutor at Ravensbourne. And so there is some development interested there in how it could work for designers. But certainly lots of film creators, you know, writers, they've been looking at it with keen eye. But as with the mi.mu gloves, we just want to kind of focus on what we can do, what we know, and get that out there and proving that it's a great tool, and, you know, and then hopefully other people will come on and start to adopt the technology, or, you know, do their own version.
Yeah, let someone else pick it up and run with it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Nesta. And someone, I was actually wondering, is it going to make people like managers and agents redundant? But somebody else, Rose, has asked, what have the reactions of the big music production companies been like?
Yeah, in the beginning it was not very fruitful. I think because there was a lot of discussion whenever I did an interview. And there was a lot of talk around that time in the early, like 3 years ago, when people were talking about, you know, starting afresh and just like the new era, and get rid of the old and cut out the middlemen and all that kind of talk, which really didn't help us, because even though I might have said that once, I soon realised that I was just speaking the speak, and actually we do really need them. We need to remember that there's all these legacy artists who are in a worse state than, you know, anyone coming up with new music now, because they're hooked into these old contracts. So it's really in everybody's interest to start to think about how, you know, these new methods of distribution and remuneration all in one can address the problems and be an incentive for the labels now to want to go into that blockchain-powered music space, because it just saves them tons of money and stops them ever being audited again, and they can just get back to being supportive of music makers, and just it's all about the creativity and not having to worry about the kind of accounting side of things and the crediting and the licensing side. I mean, we always want people to collectively do good deals on our behalf, like the collection societies, like the PRS, kind of making sure they get a good deal on behalf of all the writers with the BBC or with Sky or whatever. But from the kind of, you know, the payout side, it would be great to have some innovation there.
So actually the agents and managers are fine, it's the accountants and the rights executives that are going to be retiring early to the Caribbean.
No, I don't think they'll be retiring. I think they'll just be doing different things, and I think that's okay.
Okay, good. We have a couple of minutes left. Okay. Now look, there's a question about the abstract concepts of blockchain. I happen to know that our next speaker is one of the biggest blockchain experts, certainly I've come across. So unless you are burning to talk about the technical aspects of blockchain, I will shelve that question for Vinay to answer. But
I'm not burning. I'm very grateful to actually not have to be talking about that, because I think I really, for a very long time, have just wanted to talk about the vision, because that's what I love to talk about, and that's what I can do.
Okay, so we've banked one question for Vinay already, hasn't even come on yet. Okay, so a couple more. See if you can answer them both in the remaining 2 minutes. Can you tell us anything about what's happened as other industries picked up the system, like designers, or is that really just not on your radar?
I mean, you know, just being here the last day, lots of people coming in, talking about that, and, you know, we want to help as much as we can, but our resources are like my pocket at the moment. If anyone would like to give me some money to help do this, that'd be wonderful.
Nesta?
Yeah, we are really, that's part of this tour, actually, Nesta. No, the part of the tour is to, hopefully before then, to find a key sponsor, because we do need 2 million for the next year to cover. We're doing it every week. We're doing a conference, a talk, a show, a workshop, a kids' workshop, getting music makers together to try to, do what a tour does, a music tour does, get fans, get support, and just try to convince music makers that they need to, verify themselves in this app. But really, actually, it does nothing else. It's like, why would I do that? And you're like, because this is the future you believe in. So it's a bit of a crazy thing to have to do, but we feel like it's the only way because we haven't received funding, we haven't received the support that we needed.
So get out there on the road. Somebody has actually asked about the problem of verifying people, and slightly risky. Lots of great questions coming in. This always happens. Great questions come in. Just we run out of time. If you don't mind, the verify question is important, but I'd love to skip on to one and just finish with this one. Are there, and I think this might also be a question about the future, are there any patent or copyright restrictions around gestures? And what is open and what will be proprietary? Is there a risk that someone will copyright a certain gesture and you'll no longer be able to use that when you dance?
I really hope not. I can't imagine that would be terrible. No, God help us, no. No, just no.
Give the most enormous round of applause for those fantastic start to the day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Imogen.